Hey there, fellow preppers and survival enthusiasts. Welcome back to SurvivalScope. Today we're diving deep into a topic that's close to every prepper's heart. Those essential items you simply can't have too much of. We're talking about the gear and supplies that form the backbone of any solid preparedness plan. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, but Larry, isn't prepping all about moderation and having just enough? Well, yes and no. While it's true that we don't want to go overboard and hoard unnecessary items, there are certain things that are so versatile, so crucial, that having an abundance of them is not just okay, it's downright smart. Let's start with power. Because in a crisis, power is life. In our increasingly digital world, having a reliable source of power can make the difference between staying informed and connected or being left in the dark, literally and figuratively. That's where solar generators, solar panels, and portable chargers come in. Solar generators are like having a miniature power plant at your disposal. They're clean, quiet, and best of all, they harness the power of the sun, an energy source that's not going away anytime soon. Whether you're facing a short-term power outage or a long-term grid-down scenario, a good solar generator can keep your essential devices running. But here's the thing. One solar generator might not be enough. Think about it. You might want one for your home, one for your bug-out location, and maybe even a smaller one for your vehicle. And let's not forget about solar panels. These babies can be used to charge your generators, but they're also great for directly powering smaller devices. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, but Larry, what about cloudy days? That's where portable chargers and power banks come in handy. These compact devices can store energy for when you need it most, and trust me, in a prolonged emergency, you'll be glad you stocked up on these. But power isn't just about keeping your phones charged. It's about maintaining some semblance of normalcy in abnormal times. Imagine being able to power a small refrigerator to keep medicines cool, or running a fan during a heat wave. These aren't luxuries in a crisis, they can be lifesavers. And here's something else to consider: power generates value. In a barter economy, which often emerges in long-term crises, the ability to provide power could make you an invaluable member of your community. Charging a neighbor's phone or powering a small appliance could be traded for food, medicine, or other essential supplies. Speaking of power, let's talk about batteries and flashlights. In a world without reliable grid power, batteries become worth their weight in gold. Think about all the devices in your prep kit that run on batteries, flashlights, radios, GPS units, and more. Now imagine trying to navigate a crisis without these tools. Not a pretty picture, right? That's why I always say you can never have too many batteries. Stock up on a variety of sizes, AA, AAA, C, D, and those little button batteries too. And don't forget about rechargeable batteries. Paired with your solar setup, these can provide a renewable source of power for your smaller devices. Now let's shine a light on flashlights. Pun absolutely intended. A good flashlight is more than just a way to see in the dark. It's a signaling device, a self-defense tool, and in some cases even a morale booster. Ever tried telling scary stories around a campfire with a flashlight under your chin? Classic. But here's the kicker. Flashlights break. They get lost. They fall into rivers when you're trying to filter water at night. Don't ask me how I know. That's why having multiple flashlights isn't just a good idea, it's essential. And let's talk about the different types of flashlights. You've got your standard handheld ones, sure. But what about headlamps for hands-free operation? Or lanterns for lighting up a larger area? How about those tiny keychain lights that can be attached to zippers or backpack straps? Each type of light has its place in a comprehensive prep kit. And remember, light isn't just about functionality, it's about safety and psychological comfort too. In a blackout situation, being able to light up your space can provide a much-needed sense of security and normalcy. Now let's shift gears and talk about something that's crucial in any emergency situation: first aid supplies. Specifically, let's focus on two items that you should always have in abundance: BandAids and antibiotic ointments. These might seem like simple, even mundane items, but in a crisis situation when medical help might be hard to come by, they can be absolute lifesavers. Minor cuts and scrapes, if left untreated, can quickly become infected, and in a survival situation, even a small infection can become a big problem. That's why I always recommend stocking up on a variety of BandAids. Get different sizes for different types of wounds. Don't forget about butterfly closures for larger cuts, and consider stocking up on liquid bandages too. These can be great for those hard-to-cover areas like knuckles or between fingers. As for antibiotic ointments, they're your first line of defense against infection. A small dab on a minor wound can prevent a world of trouble down the line. And here's a pro tip: look for ointments that also include pain relievers. They can help take the edge off while promoting healing. But here's something many people don't consider. These items aren't just for you and your family. In a community-wide emergency, being able to provide basic first aid to others can be invaluable. It's not just about being a good neighbor, though that's important too. It's about building goodwill and establishing yourself as a valuable member of your community. And let's not forget about the barter potential. In a prolonged crisis, medical supplies often become one of the most sought-after commodities. A few Band-Aids and some antibiotic ointment could be traded for food, water, or other essential supplies. Alright, let's talk about something that can really get your survival engine running: fuel. And I'm not just talking about gasoline for your car, though that's important too. I'm talking about a variety of fuels for different purposes. First up, let's consider propane. This versatile fuel can be used for cooking, heating, and even powering some types of generators. It stores well for long periods and is relatively safe to handle with proper precautions. Having a good supply of propane cylinders in various sizes can be a game changer in a long-term emergency. Next, think about white gas or Coleman fuel. This is great for camping stoves and lanterns. It burns clean and hot, making it ideal for cooking or providing light and heat in emergency situations. Don't forget about good old-fashioned firewood. If you have the space to store it properly, keeping it dry is key. A good stockpile of firewood can provide heat, light, and a way to cook food for an extended period. For those of you with diesel vehicles or generators, having a supply of diesel fuel, properly stored of course, can keep you mobile and powered up when gas stations are closed or empty. And here's one that people often overlook: lighter fluid. Not only is it useful for starting fires quickly, but it can also be used as a solvent or cleaner in a pinch. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but Larry, storing fuel can be dangerous. And you're absolutely right. Safety should always be your top priority. Make sure you're following all local regulations and safety guidelines when storing fuel. Use proper containers. Store them in well-ventilated areas away from living spaces, and rotate your stock to keep it fresh. But here's the thing about fuel. In a crisis, it becomes incredibly valuable. Being able to cook food, stay warm, or power essential equipment can make a huge difference in your comfort and survival. And in a barter economy, fuel becomes like liquid gold. A gallon of gas or a propane cylinder could be traded for a wide variety of other essential supplies. Now let's talk about something that might not seem as exciting as fuel or power, but is absolutely essential in any survival situation: binding material. I'm talking about things like duct tape, rope, paracord, zip ties, and even good old-fashioned string. These items are the unsung heroes of the prepping world. They might not be flashy, but they're incredibly versatile, and can help you solve a wide range of problems in a crisis. Let's start with the prepper's best friend, duct tape. Is there anything this miracle material can't do? You can use it to patch holes, create makeshift bandages, repair gear, build shelters, and even make cordage in a pinch. I always say if you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough duct tape. Next up, rope and paracord. These are absolute must-haves in any survival kit. Use them for building shelters, creating clotheslines, securing gear, making snares for small game, and even as emergency shoelaces. Paracord is especially useful because you can unravel it to access the smaller inner strands for more delicate tasks. Don't forget about zip ties. These little plastic wonders are incredibly strong for their size and can be used to secure gear, create improvised repairs, and even as makeshift handcuffs if you're in a security situation. And let's not overlook plain old string or twine. It might not be as strong as rope, but it's great for a multitude of tasks like sewing, fishing, or even dental floss in a pinch. The beauty of binding materials is that they're relatively cheap, easy to store, and incredibly versatile. You can use them to fix, create, or modify almost anything. In a survival situation, the ability to repair gear or create tools from available materials can be a game changer. And here's something to consider. In a barter economy, these items could be incredibly valuable. Imagine being able to trade a roll of duct tape or a bundle of paracord for food or other supplies. People will always need ways to fix and build things, making these simple items potentially very valuable. Now let's talk about something that makes some preppers uncomfortable: money. Specifically, the importance of having a stash of cash, gold, and silver as part of your preparedness strategy. In our digital age, it's easy to forget the importance of physical currency. But in a crisis situation, especially one that affects the power grid or banking systems, having cash on hand can be crucial. I'm not talking about emptying your bank account, but having enough cash to cover essential expenses for a few weeks can make a huge difference. But what about longer-term crises? That's where gold and silver come in. These precious metals have been used as a store of value for thousands of years, and for good reason. They're portable, divisible, and universally recognized as valuable. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but Larry, I can't afford to buy gold, and that's okay. You don't need to have a vault full of gold bars to be prepared. Even a few gold coins or a small stack of silver rounds can provide a layer of financial security in uncertain times. The key is to think of these as a form of insurance. You hope you never need to use them, but if you do, you'll be glad you have them. In a situation where traditional currency loses value, gold and silver can help preserve your purchasing power. And let's not forget about the barter potential. In a prolonged crisis, precious metals could become a de facto currency. A silver coin might be traded for food, medicine, or other essential supplies. Remember, financial preparedness is just as important as having food and water stored. It's about giving yourself options and flexibility in a crisis situation. Now let's talk about something that might raise a few eyebrows: alcohol, cigarettes, and other so-called vices. Before we dive in, let me be clear. I'm not advocating for the use of these items, but from a preparedness standpoint, they can be incredibly valuable. In times of stress and uncertainty, many people turn to these items for comfort or relief, and in a prolonged crisis situation, they can become extremely valuable commodities. Let's start with alcohol. Beyond its obvious use as a social lubricant, alcohol has a variety of practical applications. It can be used as a disinfectant, a fire starter, or even as a fuel in some situations. And let's not forget its preservation properties. Many herbs and medicinal plants can be preserved in alcohol. When it comes to stocking up on alcohol, think variety. Different size bottles can be useful for different purposes or for trade. And don't just focus on hard liquor. Beer and wine can be valuable too. Now cigarettes. Again, I'm not advocating for smoking, but in a crisis situation, cigarettes can be like gold. They're lightweight, easy to store, and have a long shelf life. For those who smoke, going without in a stressful situation can be extremely difficult, making cigarettes a highly sought-after item. Let's talk about another social lubricant that might be even more valuable in a crisis situation: coffee. In our caffeine-driven world, coffee is more than just a beverage. It's a lifeline, a comfort, and potentially a powerful bartering tool. Think about it. In times of stress and uncertainty, that morning cup of coffee can be a critical moment of normalcy. For many people, coffee isn't just a drink, it's a ritual, a psychological boost that helps them face challenging days. When stocking up on coffee, consider multiple forms: whole beans, longest shelf life; ground coffee, instant coffee packets, and green, unroasted coffee beans. Pro tip: green coffee beans can be stored for years and roasted as needed. This gives you maximum flexibility and longevity in your coffee storage. But coffee's value goes beyond just drinking. It can be used for bartering, potential medicinal uses, flavoring other foods, potential use as a natural pesticide, composting, or odor absorption. In a prolonged crisis, coffee could become as valuable as currency. I've heard stories about survivors of economic collapses where a pound of coffee was worth more than actual money. People will trade significant resources for that little bit of comfort and normalcy. When storing coffee, keep these preservation tips in mind. Store in cool, dark places, use airtight containers, avoid moisture and direct sunlight. Consider vacuum sealing for long-term storage. Remember, in a survival situation, coffee isn't just a luxury, it's a morale booster, a potential trade good, and a small piece of normalcy in an abnormal world. But here's the real value of these items, their potential for barter. In many historical crisis situations, alcohol and cigarettes have become de facto currencies. A bottle of whiskey or a carton of cigarettes or even coffee could potentially be traded for food, medicine, or other essential supplies. And it's not just about the items themselves, it's about understanding human nature. In difficult times, people often seek comfort in familiar habits or vices. Being able to provide these, responsibly of course, can make you a valuable member of your community. Remember, preparedness isn't just about having the right gear. It's about understanding human behavior and being ready to navigate complex social situations in a crisis. Let's spark up a conversation about one of the most fundamental survival tools, fire starters. You might think, matches and lighters? Those are so basic. But trust me, when it comes to these simple yet crucial items, you can never have too many. Fire is life in a survival situation. It provides warmth, light, a way to purify water, cook food, and even a psychological boost. That's why having multiple, reliable ways to start a fire is so important. Let's start with matches. Waterproof matches are ideal, but even regular kitchen matches can work if properly stored in a waterproof container. I like to keep matches in several places: in my bug-out bag, in the car, in my home emergency kit, and even in my wallet. Lighters are another great option. Disposable lighters are cheap and easy to store, but don't forget about refillable lighters too. These can be a great long-term option if you also stock up on lighter fluid. But let's not stop there. Ferrocerium rods, often called ferro rods, are fantastic fire starters that can work in almost any condition. They produce hot sparks even when wet and can last for thousands of strikes. And here's a pro tip. Don't forget about alternative fire starters. Things like magnifying glasses, battery and steel wool combinations, or even fire pistons can be great additions to your fire starting arsenal. The beauty of fire starters is that they're generally cheap, easy to store, and incredibly valuable in a crisis. And here's something to consider. In a barter situation, the ability to provide fire could be incredibly valuable. Imagine being able to trade a handful of lighters or a box of matches for other essential supplies. Remember, when it comes to fire starters, redundancy is key. You don't want to rely on just one method, because when you need fire, you really need fire. Now let's get our hands dirty and talk about manual tools and hardware. In a world that's increasingly reliant on electric and battery-powered tools, having a good set of manual tools can set you apart in a crisis situation. Think about it. In a prolonged power outage or a situation where fuel is scarce, those electric drills and power saws aren't going to do you much good. That's where good old-fashioned hand tools come in. Start with the basics. Hammers, screwdrivers, both flathead and Phillips, pliers, wrenches, and a good handsaw. These will allow you to handle a wide range of repairs and construction tasks. But don't stop there. Consider adding specialized tools like a crowbar for prying and leverage, a hand drill and bit set for when you need precision, a block plane for woodworking, a set of chisels for detailed work, and let's not forget about hardware. Nails, screws, nuts, bolts, washers. These small items can make a huge difference in your ability to repair and build. I always recommend having a good variety of sizes and types. Here's a pro tip. Don't just buy tools, learn how to use them effectively. Practice basic repairs and construction projects around your home. This will not only improve your skills but also help you understand which tools you use most often and might need extras of. Now let's talk about hardware. It might seem mundane, but having a good stock of nails, screws, nuts, bolts, and washers can be incredibly valuable. These small items can make the difference between being able to repair something crucial or not. And don't forget about less common hardware items like wire for repairs or creating snares, hooks for hanging items or fishing, and rivets for joining materials without welding. The beauty of tools and hardware is that they don't really go bad. Properly stored, they can last for years or even decades. And in a long-term crisis situation, the ability to repair and build things could make you an invaluable member of your community. Think about it. In a world where manufacturing has stopped or been severely disrupted, the person who can fix a broken generator or build a water filtration system becomes incredibly valuable. Your tools and skills could be traded for other essential supplies or services. Remember, self-reliance is at the heart of prepping, and having a good set of tools and the knowledge to use them is a big step towards true self-reliance. Now let's talk about something that might not be as exciting as tools or fire starters, but is absolutely crucial for long-term survival: hygiene and sanitation supplies. I'm talking about things like toilet paper, feminine hygiene products, bar soap, bleach, trash bags, buckets, and vinegar. In a crisis situation, maintaining proper hygiene and sanitation isn't just about comfort, it's about preventing disease. When normal waste management systems break down, the risk of illness skyrockets. That's why having a good stock of these items is so important. Let's start with the obvious: toilet paper. We all saw how quickly this became a hot commodity during the early days of the pandemic. But beyond just comfort, having proper sanitation supplies helps prevent the spread of disease. Feminine hygiene products are another essential that often gets overlooked in prepping lists. Ladies, make sure you have a good supply stocked up. And gentlemen, if you have women in your household or group, make sure you account for their needs too. Bar soap is preferable to liquid soap for long-term storage. It lasts longer and takes up less space. Don't forget about hand sanitizer too. It's great when water is scarce. Bleach is incredibly versatile. It can be used for cleaning, disinfecting water, and even treating some types of wounds in a pinch. Just remember that bleach does have a shelf life, so rotate your stock. Trash bags have a multitude of uses beyond just holding garbage. They can be used as makeshift rain ponchos for collecting rainwater, or even as part of a solar still for purifying water. Buckets are another multi-use item. They can be used for storing water for sanitation purposes, or even as improvised planters for growing food. And let's not forget about vinegar. This humble household item can be used for cleaning, food preservation, and even medicinal purposes. The key with hygiene and sanitation supplies is to think beyond just your immediate needs. In a long-term crisis, these items could become incredibly valuable for barter. Imagine being able to trade a roll of toilet paper or a bar of soap for food or other essential supplies. Remember, in a survival situation, staying clean and healthy is just as important as having food and water. Don't underestimate the importance of these basic hygiene and sanitation supplies. In our digital age, it's easy to forget the value of good old-fashioned books, but when it comes to prepping, having a library of resource books can be incredibly valuable. After all, in a grid-down situation, you can't exactly Google how to purify water or treat a wound. So, what kinds of books should you include in your prepper library? Here are some categories to consider: survival guides, books that cover basic and advanced survival skills for various environments and situations; first aid manuals, comprehensive guides on treating injuries and illnesses when professional medical help isn't available; foraging guides, books that help you identify edible plants in your area. Remember to get guides specific to your region; gardening and agriculture, books on growing your own food, including information on crop rotation, pest control, and preserving harvests; animal husbandry. If you're planning on raising animals for food, books on caring for livestock can be invaluable. Bushcraft and primitive skills, books that teach you how to make tools and survive using only what nature provides. Food preservation, guides on canning, dehydrating, smoking, and other methods of preserving food without refrigeration. Basic engineering and construction, books on how to build structures, create simple machines, and repair common household items. Alternative energy, guides on setting up and maintaining solar, wind, or hydropower systems. Medicinal plants, books on identifying and using plants for medicinal purposes. Remember, the goal isn't just to collect these books, but to actually read them and practice the skills they teach. Knowledge is only power if you know how to apply it. And here's something to consider. In a long-term crisis situation, these books could become incredibly valuable. The person with knowledge on how to grow food, treat illnesses, or build shelters becomes an invaluable member of any community. Now let's talk about something that might surprise some of you. BB guns and pellet guns. You might be thinking, aren't those just toys? But in a survival situation, these can be incredibly useful tools. First, let's clarify. We're not talking about the Red Ryder BB gun you had as a kid. Modern air rifles can be powerful, accurate, and incredibly useful for a variety of tasks. Here are some reasons why you might want to include air rifles in your preps. Hunting small game. In a survival situation, small game like rabbits and squirrels can be a valuable food source. Air rifles are perfect for this kind of hunting. Pest control. If you're growing your own food, you'll need to protect it from pests. Air rifles can help keep rodents and birds away from your crops. Training. Air rifles are great for teaching and practicing marksmanship skills without the noise and expense of firearms. Quiet operation. In a situation where you don't want to draw attention to yourself, the relative quietness of air rifles can be a big advantage. Affordable ammunition. BBs and pellets are much cheaper than traditional ammunition, allowing for more practice and longer-term use. When it comes to stocking up on ammunition for your air rifles, more is definitely better. Unlike firearm ammunition, BBs and pellets are small, lightweight, and easy to store in large quantities. Remember, while air rifles can be very useful tools, they're not toys. Proper safety practices should always be followed, just as with any other type of gun. In a barter economy, having air rifles and a good supply of ammunition could be valuable. The ability to hunt small game or protect crops from pests could be traded for other essential supplies or services. Alright folks, let's talk about the absolute basics of survival, food and water. Now I know what you're thinking. Larry, isn't this obvious? Well yes, but you'd be surprised how many people underestimate just how much food and water they really need. Let's start with water. You can survive for weeks without food, but only days without water. The general rule is 1 gallon per person per day, and that's just for drinking and basic sanitation. If you're in a hot climate or doing physical labor, you'll need even more. But here's the thing. You can never have too much water stored. Why? Because water isn't just for drinking. You need it for cooking, cleaning, personal hygiene, and even first aid. And in a long-term crisis, water becomes liquid gold. Now, when it comes to storing water, think beyond just bottles and jugs. Consider larger options like water barrels or even a rainwater collection system. And don't forget about water purification methods. Filters, purification tablets, and even good old-fashioned boiling. Because having access to water is one thing, but making sure it's safe to drink is another. Moving on to food, this is where things get interesting. When we talk about stockpiling food, we're not just talking about filling your pantry with canned goods, although that's a good start. We're talking about creating a diverse, nutritious food supply that can sustain you and your family for an extended period. Here's what I recommend. Start with the basics: rice, beans, pasta, and other dry goods. These have a long shelf life and provide a good base for meals. Don't forget about canned goods: fruits, vegetables, meats, and soups. These provide variety and important nutrients. Consider freeze-dried foods. They're lightweight, have a long shelf life, and retain most of their nutritional value. Comfort foods are important too. In stressful times, a familiar snack can be a real morale booster. Don't neglect fats and oils. They're calorie-dense and crucial for certain cooking methods. Spices and condiments might seem like a luxury, but they can make a huge difference in making basic foods palatable over a long period. If you have the space, consider starting a garden. Fresh produce can supplement your stored foods and provide vital nutrients. Now here's something many people overlook: the ability to produce your own food. Seeds don't take up much space, but they could be incredibly valuable. Imagine being able to grow your own fresh vegetables months or even years into a crisis situation. And let's talk about food preservation, canning, dehydrating, smoking. These are skills that can help you extend the life of your food supplies and make the most of whatever resources are available. Remember, when it comes to food and water, it's not just about quantity, it's about quality and variety. You want to avoid food fatigue and ensure you're getting all the nutrients you need to stay healthy and strong. And here's a final thought. In a long-term crisis, the ability to provide food and clean water could make you an invaluable member of your community. These aren't just supplies, they're potential bargaining chips. A few packets of seeds or a water filter could be worth their weight in gold in the right circumstances. So, my fellow preppers, when it comes to food and water, don't just stock up, skill up. Learn about nutrition, food preservation, and water purification. Because in a crisis, these aren't just supplies, they're the keys to survival. As we wrap up our discussion on items you can never have too much of, it's important to remember that prepping isn't just about accumulating stuff. It's about developing a mindset of self-reliance and readiness. All the items we've discussed, from power sources and tools to hygiene supplies and resource books, are important. But what's even more important is the knowledge and skills to use these items effectively. Remember, the goal of prepping isn't to hoard supplies, but to be ready for whatever challenges life might throw your way. It's about being able to take care of yourself and your loved ones in difficult times. As you build your stockpile, focus on versatility and practicality. Look for items that have multiple uses and that you know how to use effectively. And don't forget to rotate your supplies. Even the best stocked prepper pantry isn't much use if everything in it is expired. Finally, remember that true preparedness is about community. While it's important to be self-reliant, no one can truly go it alone in a long-term crisis. Build relationships with like-minded individuals in your area. Share knowledge and skills. Because in the end, the most valuable prep of all might just be the community you build around you. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the world of prepping. Remember, stay safe, stay prepared, and keep learning. This is Larry from SurvivalScope signing off.